Her name is Crystal because her parents named her after crystal meth.
Authorities in Texas are searching for 37-year-old Crystal McDowell, a mother of two, who disappeared nearly 2 weeks ago as Hurricane Harvey was bearing down on the coast of Texas.
Crystal McDowell's life was really tough from the start. Her parents, who named her after a dangerous drug, died when she was just 11. They got sick from using drugs and passed away. As a teenager, Crystal faced even more challenges. She was kidnapped and sexually assaulted, but she was strong and brave and was able to escape. Even though she went through a terrible experience, she was very strong and determined to restart her life. She moved to a new place, Baytown, Texas, to live with her aunt and uncle. Crystal wanted to have a better life. She worked hard to forget the bad things that happened to her. She met a nice man named Stephen McDowell, and they got married. They had 2 children, Madden Alexander McDowell, Maui Loralee McDowell. Crystal loved her children very much and took good care of them. On the outside, Crystal, Stephen McDowell, and their children seemed like the perfect family. They appeared happy and complete, but things were not as perfect as they looked. Deep down, Crystal was becoming more and more unhappy with her marriage. After being married for 10 years, she made the difficult choice to end things with Stephen. This decision wasn't easy for her, and Stephen strongly opposed it. He did not want a divorce and struggled to accept her decision. While waiting to move into her new house, which was being renovated, Crystal continued living with Stephen and their children. This living arrangement was tense and stressful for everyone. The household was filled with emotional challenges as they all tried to cope with the reality of their upcoming separation. Despite the difficulties, Crystal was determined to push forward and build a better future for herself and her children. By 2017, Crystal was 37 years old and had started making big changes in her life. She began focusing on her career in real estate, which symbolized a fresh start for her. Moving into her new home marked an important new chapter and a step toward independence. On August 25, 2017, Crystal was excited because she had plans to meet her family to watch a big event, the highly anticipated Mayweather versus McGregor fight. Family and friends were eagerly gathered to watch the match, expecting Crystal to join them and enjoy the evening together. However, Crystal never arrived. At first, no one panicked when Crystal didn't show up. People assumed she was caught up with her busy schedule as a working mom. They thought she might be running late or dealing with some unexpected issue. But as time passed, her absence began to feel unusual, and the initial sense of calm started turning into concern. As the night went on and Crystal did not answer any texts or calls, her family started to worry more. When more than 24 hours passed without hearing from her, her family made a tough decision. They reported her missing to the Chambers County Sheriff's Department. A deputy was sent to Crystal's house right away. When he arrived, he spoke to Crystal's ex-husband, Stephen. Stephen, who had divorced Crystal recently, told the deputy that she had started seeing someone else after their separation. He mentioned that sometimes she would go out and not tell him where she was going. However, as Stephen spoke, the deputy noticed something strange in his tone, which made him suspicious. To be safe, the deputy called for backup, and an experienced detective joined him. The detective found it odd that Stephen was still wearing his wedding ring, even though they had been divorced for 6 months. Although Stephen was cooperative, the detective felt that something was off. Because of the unusual details surrounding Crystal's disappearance, the detective reached out to the district attorney. After reading the reports, the district attorney suspected that something serious, possibly a crime, had happened. One detail that raised concern was that even though Crystal and Stephen were divorced, they were still living together, and Crystal had a new boyfriend. This made the district attorney think that Stephen might be hiding something. Still, the detective considered other possibilities. While it was possible Stephen could be involved, the detective wanted to find out more, especially about Crystal's boyfriend. They learned that the last person Crystal went out with on August 24, 2017, was Paul Hargrave, a local man who managed a well-known jewelry store. Paul told the detectives that he and Crystal spent the night together, and the next morning, while he was taking a shower, she left his house. He even provided security footage showing Crystal leaving his house at 7:35 a.m. on August 25th, driving her black Mercedes coupe. Both Stephen and Paul became main suspects in Crystal's case, but the detectives knew they had to look into other people too. While investigating, they discovered surprising facts about Crystal's life. It turned out that during her marriage, she had affairs with various flight attendants and pilots, both men and women. This raised more questions. Could one of these people have hurt Crystal out of anger or revenge? However, there was no clear evidence linking these affairs to her disappearance. The investigation stalled when Hurricane Harvey hit Baytown, causing massive flooding and damage. The storm made it hard to continue searching for Crystal as roads were flooded, and the sheriff's department had to focus on helping people survive the storm. The hurricane's impact was so big that the search for Crystal was almost forgotten as people dealt with the destruction and loss of homes, cars, and lives. With police resources tied up in hurricane response, Crystal's family took it upon themselves to keep the search going. They shared posts on Facebook and Instagram asking for tips or help finding Crystal. One day, a cousin received a message from a friend saying they saw a picture on Snapchat showing Crystal's car at a Motel 6 parking lot near Interstate 10. Crystal's cousin immediately checked the picture and confirmed it was her car by the license plate. The family told the police about this new clue, but the heavy flooding in Chambers County made it difficult to reach the motel by car. They had to use airboats to navigate the flooded roads. When they got to the motel, they found Crystal's car parked in a messy way with the keys still in the ignition. It looked like someone had left the car there, hoping it would get stolen. The car was taken to a crime lab, but unfortunately, no new evidence was found. The popular news show Dateline even covered Crystal's disappearance. But despite all efforts, there were no new leads or answers. A week after Crystal disappeared, the detective realized he needed more help, especially since the chaos from Hurricane Harvey had complicated the case. He contacted the Texas Rangers, who were ready to assist. A lead Texas Ranger soon took over and conducted the first formal interview with Stephen, Crystal's husband. Stephen told the ranger that he hadn't seen Crystal since she went out on a date on August 24th. Right from the start, the ranger noticed that Stephen's behavior seemed strange. Stephen didn't seem as worried or anxious as one would expect from someone whose wife had suddenly gone missing. Despite this, Crystal's friends and family stood by Stephen. They knew him well and couldn't believe he would harm Crystal. They spoke about how loving he was, especially as a father to their children, Madden and Maui. They were confident that Stephen wouldn't do anything to hurt Crystal. However, the ranger decided to dig deeper and asked Stephen if he would take a lie detector test. Stephen agreed, appearing confident that he had nothing to hide. Surprisingly, Stephen failed the lie detector test, which raised even more doubts about him. The ranger's suspicions grew. Crystal's boyfriend, Paul Hargrave, was also a suspect, so he was asked to take a lie detector test too. Like Stephen, Paul also failed the test. With both Stephen and Paul failing, the district attorney started to wonder if they could be hiding the truth together. By this point, many believed that something bad had happened to Crystal and that she was likely no longer alive. However, the main question remained, where was her body? If Crystal's body had been left in one of the bayous around Baytown, it could have easily been swept into the Gulf of Mexico, making it nearly impossible to find. To try to locate her, a search was organized on September 9th, involving the Texas ECWU search team and volunteers. Nearly 100 people joined in, using ATVs and airboats to search the area in a grid pattern, covering every part carefully. But despite their hard work, they didn't find any sign of Crystal. As the search continued, the Texas Rangers remained determined to solve the mystery. They worked tirelessly to piece together what happened and figure out if anyone had a motive. They also considered if either Stephen or Paul could be involved, but there wasn't any strong evidence pointing to them. The ranger thought that security camera footage might hold some answers, so officers checked around the motel where Crystal's car had been found, looking for cameras that might have captured something useful. Luckily, They found some businesses with security cameras. The ranger spent hours going through the footage until he found a video showing someone parking Crystal's car at the motel at 6:37 a.m. on August 26th. The footage was clear enough to see the man's face, but the ranger couldn't identify him right away. Then, as he continued to review the footage, he saw that the man got out of Crystal's car and walked away. The ranger suspected that this person could be Stephen, Crystal's ex-husband. His suspicions grew stronger when he found another video from a gas station next to the motel. In this video, taken 5 hours later, a blue Mustang GT, just like Stephen's car, pulled up to the gas pump. This discovery made the ranger more convinced that the man seen parking Crystal's car at the motel could indeed be Stephen. Stephen's actions at the gas station made people suspicious. Instead of putting gas in his car, he walked over to the parking lot of Motel 6 and seemed to be checking out Crystal's car. The rangers thought Stephen might have gone there earlier to see if Crystal's car was still in the parking lot. He had left the keys in the ignition, probably hoping someone would steal it. But if Stephen was the one behind Crystal's disappearance, how did he get home afterwards? The place where Crystal's car was left and Stephen's house were far apart, making it unlikely that he could have walked home. To find answers, the rangers decided to look at footage from security cameras around the area. They found a video of a man riding a bike in the rain on the interstate service road at 7:05 a.m., about 25 minutes after Crystal's car was left in the parking lot. The bike had special mag wheels, and this caught the ranger's attention. It reminded him of a bike he had seen in Stephen's garage during an earlier interview. Stephen had mentioned to the ranger that he had been shopping at Walmart that Saturday morning. The ranger decided to check the store's security footage. This footage showed a man who looked like Stephen arriving at Walmart in a hooded sweatshirt. He paid cash for a bike with mag wheels, just minutes after Crystal's car had been left at Motel 6. With this new evidence, the ranger called Stephen back for another interview at the police station. They confronted Stephen with all the details they had collected, but Stephen denied any involvement in Crystal's disappearance. Even though Stephen denied it, the ranger was convinced that Stephen was guilty and that Paul Hargrave, who had been suspected before, was innocent. The problem was that they didn't have one crucial piece of evidence: Crystal's body. Without it, it was hard to prove a murder charge because it would mostly be based on indirect evidence and witness statements. Finding Crystal's body would not only make the case stronger, but also give her family some closure. The family was going through a lot of pain without knowing what had happened to her. Another reason the district attorney, DA, wanted to find Crystal's body was because of Stephen's past disturbing behavior. After Crystal filed for divorce, people told the Texas Ranger that Stephen made scary comments about murder and suicide. The Ranger and the DA were worried about the safety of Crystal and Stephen's kids, Madden and Maui. Because of this, the DA decided to place the children in protective services to keep them safe. To make Stephen cooperate, the DA offered him a deal. If Stephen helped them find Crystal's body, they would think about letting him see his children again. Stephen made a counteroffer. He asked if he could go home that night and promised to tell them everything and lead them to Crystal's body the next morning. The DA agreed, knowing they were taking a big risk. Stephen could run away or hurt himself, which would leave Crystal's fate unknown. The next morning on September 9th, the DA and the Texas Ranger went to Stephen's house. Stephen opened the door and agreed to talk. During the interview, he shared that he knew about Crystal's affairs during their marriage. He said that when he confronted her, Crystal told him to stay out of her personal life. She admitted she looked for relationships outside their marriage because she felt Stephen was not assertive enough in their relationship. The Ranger and the DA used a kind approach to get Stephen to talk, hoping he would open up. They pretended to be understanding, trying to make Stephen feel comfortable enough to share what happened to Crystal on the day she went missing. However, even with this tactic, Stephen did not reveal any new details about Crystal's disappearance. Stephen eventually admitted what had happened. According to him, before Crystal disappeared, they had a big argument. During the fight, Crystal tells Stephen she doesn't love him anymore. This led to an intense confrontation, and Stephen said he acted without thinking. He admitted to suffocating Crystal but claimed it was an accident, saying he didn't mean to harm her. After Crystal died, Stephen acted quickly to hide what he had done. He wrapped her body in trash bags and put it in the trunk of her car, a Mercedes. He drove to a hidden area and threw her body into a ravine.
Stephen later offered to show the authorities where Crystal's body was, but only if they agreed not to pursue the death penalty against him. The district attorney, realizing they might not find Crystal's body without Stephen's help, reluctantly agreed. Stephen led the district attorney and a park ranger to a remote road called Needle Point Road, surrounded by dense woods. Eventually, the ranger found Crystal's body, but it was in terrible condition, with barely anything left. When Stephen was arrested and charged with Crystal's murder, his lawyers prepared a defense based on what is called the sudden passion clause. This argument claimed that Stephen acted in the heat of the moment, driven by powerful emotions like anger or fear, which clouded his judgment. In Texas, if a defendant can prove that sudden passion caused their actions, the charge could be reduced to a second-degree felony, with a possible sentence of 2 to 20 years in prison and a fine of up to $10,000.
If convicted of first-degree murder, however, Stephen could face a much harsher sentence of 5 to 99 years and the same fine. The use of the sudden passion defense sparked debate. Some people felt it unfairly blamed the victim, while others believed it allowed a person to take responsibility for their actions under difficult circumstances. The district attorney, however, was sure this was premeditated murder, and all 12 jurors needed to agree for a conviction. After a year of court hearings, Stephen's trial began in June 2019. The prosecution laid out their case, focusing on Stephen's confession as key evidence and presenting video footage of him parking Crystal's car at a motel. One of the most emotional moments came when Crystal and Stephen's young daughter, Maui, testified. Maui, who was just 7, described seeing her parents fighting the night her mother died. She said she saw her father cover her mother's mouth and nose, watched her mother struggle, and then stop moving. Stephen told Maui to stay in her room and not tell anyone what she had seen. Maui said she felt scared and confused. Stephen's defense team tried to challenge Maui's testimony, claiming she had been influenced by relatives and had invented the story. Despite advice from his lawyers, Stephen chose to testify. He gave a different version of events, saying he never meant to hurt Crystal. With tears in his eyes, Stephen claimed that during their argument, he had tried to restrain her in a bear hug to calm her down, but she suddenly went limp. He said he didn't know why this happened and that he didn't intend to harm her. The district attorney found Stephen's claim that he accidentally hugged Crystal to death hard to believe, and it shocked the courtroom. As the jury deliberated, the prosecution worried about the chance of a mistrial, especially when the jury asked to review Stephen's confession video. If that happened, the trial would have to start over. After an hour, the jury came back with a verdict. They found Stephen guilty of murder. This decision brought some sense of justice and closure to Crystal's family and friends, who had been searching for answers. During sentencing, the defense again argued that the murder was due to sudden passion, hoping for a lighter sentence. However, the jury rejected this argument and maintained that Stephen was guilty of a serious crime. Stephen was sentenced to 50 years in prison. While this doesn't bring Crystal back, it offers a sense of justice for her family and friends. Crystal's case highlights the importance of recognizing the signs of domestic violence and seeking help if you or someone you know is in danger.